I'm a firm believer that life can throw the unexpected at you, often at the most inconvenient times. I had always been close with my sister, Sarah, who is 32. We grew up sharing everything, from clothes to secrets to dreams of our futures. When I got married at 28, it felt like we were moving in tandem, both navigating adulthood together, albeit on different paths. Then, everything changed. 5 months ago, Sarah showed up at my door, visibly distressed and pregnant. She claimed it was from a one-night stand. And without a second thought, I welcomed her into my home. My husband was deployed overseas for 6 months, so I was glad to have her around. I figured that I could be her support system during this tumultuous time. At first, things seemed manageable. We talked about baby names, shared late-night snacks, and bonded over our favorite movies. Yet, I began to notice a change in her demeanor. She seemed distracted, often lost in thought, and there were moments when I caught her glancing at her phone with an expression I couldn't quite place. I chalked it up to the stress of impending motherhood. But deep down, something felt off. Then came that fateful Monday. I returned home from work, excited to share the news about a promotion I had just received, only to find Sarah in the middle of a screaming match with a strange woman on our doorstep. The sight was alarming. My sister, who usually radiated warmth, was now red-faced and trembling, while the woman was aggressive and confrontational, poking Sarah in the shoulder. My instinct kicked in. I intervened and sent Sarah inside. But the woman wasn't having it. She directed her anger at me, demanding to know if I was also sleeping with her husband. Confusion washed over me as I tried to piece together the chaos unfolding in front of me. The woman revealed that Sarah had been having an affair with her husband for 5 years. 5 years. The weight of those words hung in the air like a dense fog. I was in disbelief. How could this be happening? I had known my sister as someone who valued family and loyalty. As the woman hurled accusations, she produced printed evidence, texts, photos, and receipts. I felt nauseous just looking at it. Each item was a piece of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. What I gathered was shocking. My sister had not only known about this woman, but she had embraced her role as the other woman. She had become emotionally invested in a man who was lying to her while also being a father to 4 children, one of whom had a severe disability. My heart ached for the woman confronting me. She had endured the betrayal and pain while raising her kids. I managed to calm the situation enough to ask the woman to leave. She was furious but gave me her number on a post-it, pleading with me not to let her husband stay at my house. I assured her that no man, especially not that man, would ever cross my threshold. When I returned to Sarah, she was frantic, begging me not to believe the woman. I tried to rationalize with her, pointing out the obvious. She had chosen to be in a relationship with a married man. My sister, however, was adamant that the woman was a vindictive ex-wife, trying to ruin her life. The next day was a whirlwind of emotions. I told her she could stay, not wanting her to become a burden on the woman. But I made it clear that I needed space. I didn't want to engage with her because I felt like I didn't know who she was anymore. When she asked if I still loved her, I responded honestly, right now, I can't say I do. The look on her face broke my heart. But I felt the truth needed to be said. She had shattered my trust. Not just in her, but in the very fabric of our relationship. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere in our home was strained. I continued to support her as she navigated her pregnancy, but every moment was laced with tension. I could see her trying to reach out to me, trying to make amends, but I felt so deeply betrayed that it was hard to reciprocate. As the weeks passed, I wrestled with my emotions. I found myself torn between love for my sister and anger at her choices. Every time I saw her, I was reminded of the lies she had lived. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living with a stranger. Despite everything, I still wanted to protect my sister. I began to research local support groups for women in similar situations. I thought if she had a network of people who understood her pain, it might help her process what had happened. I even suggested she reach out to a therapist. But she brushed it off, insisting she was fine. Then one day, I came across a message from Sarah on her phone. It was from the man who had betrayed her. And the tone was familiar. a mixture of affection and manipulation. I felt a wave of anger wash over me. How could she still be in contact with him? Did she really think this was going to end well? I confronted her about it. And the argument that followed was intense. She accused me of not understanding what she was going through. I argued that she was still allowing herself to be caught in a web of lies. That was when I realized how deep her denial ran. Despite the turmoil, I decided to hold a family gathering to address the situation. I wanted my parents involved. I thought perhaps the love of our family would help her see the reality of her choices. As the day approached, I felt a mixture of hope and dread. I wanted to help my sister, but I also feared how she might react. On the day of the gathering, I was anxious. As we sat around the dinner table, I watched Sarah closely. She was tense, and every time someone mentioned the future or dreams, her discomfort was palpable. I knew I needed to address the elephant in the room, but I wasn't sure how. Finally, I gathered the courage to speak up. I laid it all out there, explaining my concerns and frustrations. I emphasized the importance of acknowledging her choices and their consequences. I could see my parents exchanging worried glances, unsure how to navigate the conversation. After the family meeting, I felt a slight shift in Sarah. She seemed to soften, as if the weight of her decisions was starting to sink in. It was a small victory, but it was enough to give me hope. As weeks turned into months, I continued to be there for her, even as my own feelings remained complicated. I wanted to support her as she prepared for her baby, but every time I looked at her, I was reminded of the betrayal and the pain that had unfolded. Eventually, we found a new normal. While things were far from perfect, we started to rebuild our bond, albeit with a cautious distance. I knew it would take time for us to truly heal, but I was willing to put in the effort. In the end, the experience taught me so much about love, trust, and the complexities of family. It forced me to confront my own feelings and learn that forgiveness is a journey, not a destination. I realized that while I couldn't change the past, I could be there for my sister as she stepped into her future. One day at a time.
I'm a single dad, and my life revolves around my daughter, Lily. She's 10, full of energy, and has the kind of imagination that turns every day into an adventure. This weekend, I decided to invite my parents over for dinner, hoping for a peaceful evening where we could all catch up and enjoy each other's company. Little did I know that the night would take a sharp turn, leading me to confront long-standing issues I thought I had buried. The evening started off well enough. I prepared a hearty meal, and as we sat around the table, I could see my parents acting as if everything was normal. We talked about the usual family updates, and I could tell they were excited to see Lily. After dinner, she asked if she could play a song she had been practicing on her keyboard. She had been taking lessons for a few weeks, and while she wasn't perfect, I was incredibly proud of her progress. As she began to play, I could see the concentration on her face. She missed a few notes and paused here and there, but to me, it was beautiful. When she finished, she looked up at us, her eyes sparkling with joy. Waiting for our applause, I started clapping, a huge smile on my face. But to my shock, my parents erupted into laughter. I felt the color drain from my face. Their laughter wasn't light or playful, it was harsh and mocking. My mom asked if this was her first time playing, and my dad chimed in with a cruel jab about how a dog could have played it better. It was as if my heart had dropped into my stomach. I could see Lily's smile falter. Her shoulders slump as she glanced down at her keyboard. She's had 2 lessons, I wanted to say, to defend her, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I felt a wave of anger wash over me. The laughter continued, each chuckle piercing through me like a dagger. Lily, who had been so proud, now looked small and defeated. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. I took their cups and said, "Leave, now." My mom was taken aback, her mouth opening in disbelief as she tried to protest. But I was done. "Get your stuff and get the fuck out of my house right now," I said, my voice firm. I could see the shock in their eyes. But I didn't care. I wasn't going to let them bully my daughter the way they had bullied me. My dad huffed, and my mom tried to downplay the situation, insisting that I was overreacting. But I couldn't just sit there and let them belittle my child. I told them exactly how I felt. "You're bullies. This is why I was so messed up as a kid. Now leave." They gathered their things, My mom's eyes welling up with tears of confusion and anger. I didn't care. I felt like I had taken a stand for the first time in my life. Once they were gone, I went back to Lily, who was still sitting at the keyboard. I knelt beside her, my heart aching for her. I told her how proud I was of her, how brave she was to play in front of us. I asked if she wanted to play again, and she did. She played beautifully, and this time, I made sure to clap loudly, showering her with praise. The next day, I messaged my parents. I told them that I needed a break from them until they could behave like decent human beings. My dad replied, but his response only fueled my anger. He claimed I had been raised to be precious. Whatever that meant, I could feel my blood boil at his words. But I chose not to engage further. I didn't want to give them any more of my energy. Days went by, and I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. My parents had always been difficult, but I had never confronted them like this before. I spent my time focusing on Lily, helping her with school projects and spending quality time together. Each day, we grew closer, and I felt a sense of accomplishment in being the kind of father I always wished I had. But then my sister, Tara, got involved. She called me to express her outrage over my actions. She said I was being a nasty piece of work, and that I should never speak to my parents that way. I listened to her, but my resolve didn't waver. I knew what they had done to Lily was unacceptable. The more I thought about it, the more I recognized a pattern in my family. My parents had always favored criticism over support. They never celebrated achievements, they only pointed out flaws. I was determined to break that cycle for Lily. She deserved a nurturing environment, one where she could grow and thrive without the looming specter of judgment. As the weeks passed, I began to see changes in Lily. She was more confident and happy. The experience had been tough, but we emerged stronger. One day, while we were doing a puzzle together, she looked up at me and smiled. In that moment, I realized that I had made the right choice. Months later, my parents reached out again, asking for a family gathering. They wanted to talk things over. I was hesitant, still feeling the sting of their previous actions. But I knew that it might be necessary for Lily's sake. I didn't want her to grow up in a family filled with unresolved tension. I arranged the gathering, but I went into it with my eyes wide open. I prepared myself for the potential of hurtful comments or passive-aggressive remarks. When they arrived, I could sense the tension in the air. They had been quiet, and I could see my dad glancing around, clearly uncomfortable. As we sat down, I took a deep breath and decided to express my feelings openly. I talked about how their laughter had affected Lily and how their words had hurt me as a child. To my surprise, my mom began to cry. She apologized for her actions, saying she didn't realize how deeply her words impacted us. My dad nodded in agreement. It wasn't an easy conversation, but I felt lighter after expressing myself. For the first time, it felt like my parents were really listening. They seemed willing to change. And for Lily's sake, I hoped they would follow through. Over time, I noticed a gradual shift in our family dynamic. My parents made a concerted effort to be more supportive, not just to me but also to Lily. They celebrated her accomplishments, cheered her on, and slowly began to understand the importance of encouragement. As I looked at my daughter, thriving in this newfound environment, I felt a sense of pride. I had not only stood up for her but also helped transform our family. It wasn't easy, and it certainly took time, but I was determined to create a loving and nurturing space for Lily. In the end, I learned that it's essential to stand up for what's right, especially when it comes to protecting those you love. The journey wasn't just about confronting my parents, it was also about breaking free from a cycle of negativity and ensuring that my daughter would grow up knowing her worth and potential. I had fought for her, and in doing so, I found my own strength.